You should, when you get done with all your decreases, depending on what size you're making, you should have probably 7 or 8 stitches at the top. Two, 4, 6. I have 8 at the top of mine. But it tells you on your instructions how many stitches you should have. Now, for those of you, if here's the thing. If you get to this point and you get to the Kitchener stitch and you're like, I can't do this, the real easy ending then is to take your yarn, put it on your darning needle, put it through all the stitches and pull it tight so that it ends up being like that.
Put it on both sides.
Yes, look, you see, like if this gold were the actual yarn, you see how the gold is going through all of my stitches. So if I did that, and then when I get all done, I just pull it tight, it gathers them all up so no wait, this isn't my way. It gathers them all up so it's nice and closed and tight, and then you just take the end of it, tuck it in, like I would go around that a second time to make sure it's nice and tight. Then I'd stick the end down inside the mitten to hide it. So, well, no. If I were doing it with this here, if I were just pulling this tight, I would pull it tight, and then I would go through this a second time, pulling it tight, and then when I get done, I would just tuck it down inside. And that's enough so it should stay put. If you feel like your yarn is super slippery, then if you go from right to left, tucking the stitches in, go back in the opposite direction, because that way when you pull on it, it's going to be pulling against itself and it won't come out. All right? So to do the Kitchener stitch, oh, I need my needle again. I am making a mess of this guy. Couple things. I think what I'm going to do, just for the sake of making this a little easier to see, I'm going to put my front needle on a different color needle. At least then you can see that. All right, so when you do this, you have your front. Wow, that's really helpful. There we go. All right, so you'll notice my working yarn is in the back. Just like when we start all of our rounds, the working yarn is in the back. Now, to do this, if I look at an individual stitch, do you see how this, if I look, let's look at this stitch right here. The stitch comes out of the middle of the stitch below it, comes up and goes around and goes back into that stitch below it. What we're going to do is we're going to take the 2 rows of stitching side by side, and we're going to create a stitch to combine them. So this is what we're doing. So on the front stitch, we have to come out from here. On the top stitch, we have to go around the bottom part of it like this. All right? So keep in mind the difference between purling and knitting. When you purl, you go in this way. When you knit, you go in this way. All right? So I'm going to go in the front stitch as though I'm purling. And I'm going to pull this, I'm pulling my yarn just normally, okay? I'm going to now go in the back stitch as if I'm knitting, okay? Now I'm going to come to, now, and notice how I'm moving this yarn this way. I'm not going over the needles, I'm going under the needles, all right? Now I'm going to go in that first stitch as if to knit. And I'm going to take that stitch off. Now I'm going to go in the second stitch as if to purl. Go to the back. I go in the front stitch as if to purl, drop it off. Go in the second stitch as if to knit. This is my pattern now. I go in the front, I go in to knit, go to the next stitch to purl. Pulling the thread. Now see, I don't want that thread going over the needles, I want it under the needles. I go in the back as if to knit, and the second stitch as if to purl. The front, I go in as if to knit, and then as if to purl. Well, and it's very clear in the instructions. Then here I'm going to go purl and knit. I'm working, right, so what's happening here is I'm making, here we go, I'm making a row of stitches that's connecting the two needles together. So this right here is what I'm doing. I'm doing a row of stitches connecting them. So now I stop to talk. So now it's like, where the heck am I? All right? Well, if I look at my yarn, it's in the back, and it's going through that needle as if to purl, which means I finished the back. So that means I'm coming to the front. The front, you always start to purl. So I'm going to purl, and then knit.
And the knit one stays on.
And the knit one stays on. The first stitch you work comes off, the second stitch stays on. So that, yes. So that was a purl and a knit. Now the back, I start with a knit, and then I do a purl. No, in the next stitch. So here we go again. I'm in the front, I do a purl, and drop that stitch off, and then I do a knit. Then I go to the back, I do a knit, drop that stitch off, and do a purl. And I'm making sure that my yarn is staying below the needles, okay? So I'm at the front, I'm going to purl, knit, knit, purl. Oh, no wait, that one's, purl stays on. Go to the front, purl, knit, then I'm on the back one and I knit, purl. Now I have one stitch left on both of my needles. I'm on the front one, I purl. I'm on the back one, I knit. And then I pull it tight. And then when I look at my stitches, I have my row of Kitchener stitches that joined it all together. See? Yeah, isn't it though?